So, the Batman. Let's talk about it. Hello, everybody. How's it going? It's your boy, Story Surgeon here, and today we're going to be talking about the latest Batman movie starring Zoe Kravitz and Robert Pattinson as Catwoman and Batman, respectively. Uh, with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So, for starters, honestly, I know there was a lot of controversy in regards to Robert Pattinson being cast. A lot of people had issues with him, thinking he couldn't really shake off the stain of Twilight. I've seen some of the other things he's been in after Twilight, so I think it's safe to say that I was going in with my expectations mid. Like, I expected him to do good because he's a great actor, but at the same time, I wanted to make sure I could see Bruce and not, Robert or Edward. So, that could be challenging. Wanted to make sure he wasn't, shoved into that one pigeonhole. So it was going to be entertaining to see. And, to my surprise, he actually did phenomenally well, which is really good. Personally, I think that this movie, and I just want to say right here and now, I'll put it in the thumbnail as well, but this is a spoiler review. But as a whole, I think the movie was surprisingly very well written, I should say. I think it was arguably one of the best live action, if not the best, live action Batman films as a whole. Not to say that it was as good as The Dark Knight writing wise, but I think in terms of a Batman story, it's a better Batman story than anything from the Christopher Nolan trilogy because it covers a lot more of what Batman is. To kind of go quickly into an elaboration of what I mean by it's not a better movie, but it's a better Batman movie. If I made a Spider-Man who's like super rich, super wealthy, he never lost Uncle Ben or anything like that, and he's only Spider-Man because he wants to get a hit with the ladies. That's the only reason he does Spider-Man shit. And he goes around and he has his web shooters that he bought because someone made them for him. And he uses his powers he always makes sure that people see him. And, he never learns the great power, great responsibility. And I say that that's Spider-Man, that's Peter Parker. But there are no writing flaws in the movie at all. Like, there are no plot holes, there are no plot inconsistencies, no plot contrivances, anything. You could make an argument that I wrote a better Spider-Man film than, for example, Spider-Man 3 from the Sam Raimi trilogy, or Amazing Spider-Man 2, or Spider-Man Far From Home. You could say that, because I would argue those three were the worst written of the Spider-Man movies live action that we've seen. You could say that I made a better written film. However, you could not say that I made a better Spider-Man film because the character that I made, regardless of their powers, regardless of their name, is so opposite to Peter Parker's morals, so opposite to what makes Spider-Man Spider-Man. Which brings us to this movie. One thing that The Dark Knight did, when the Christopher Nolan trilogy did as a whole, which is really good, it focused a lot on the gadgets and the fighting aspect of Bruce Wayne. It showed us the action-packed hero, and it showed us how he conflicts with balancing being Bruce Wayne to an extent and being Batman, which was phenomenal. One thing we very rarely got in those films was the detective aspect, which is very heavy in this movie. A lot of people complain that it's slow and it's boring, but that's because a lot of it is filled with detective shit. Like, it's the Riddler is the villain. You're not going to get a cool, badass fight scene with the Batman versus the Riddler. Like, even to look at the Riddler's outfit, the Riddler doesn't take himself seriously. And this Riddler is a lot more menacing, but the goofiness of the Riddler doesn't come from his outfit anymore. It comes from just how he acts as a whole, because, he's crazy, like a lot of Batman villains are. And his craziness was to the point where it was funny. Like, there were a lot of scenes that I just was cracking up at, but I think that was partially intentional, because those scenes become more menacing when you realize how easy it is to underestimate someone like him and how dangerous he can be, which at the end of the day is a big part of what makes the Riddler the Riddler. So when you look at him and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting this guy. This guy looks like he's I don't know. He looks like he's like at the bottom of like a Reddit startup board. Like he doesn't look like the type of dude who you would think is capable of this, and that's precisely what makes the Riddler so dangerous. So I really like that aspect. And the riddles were genuinely good riddles. Like they were original. Some of the riddles he said were like easy. Like, oh, I know this riddle, but the riddles that were easy to understand were meant to be easy in order to facilitate certain phrases. And for like certain, like for example, at one point, for those who have seen the movie, he essentially puts a bomb around this character's neck, and he says that in order to get the code, he has to answer 3 riddles, and the riddles are obvious, but the answer to the riddles leads to him having to reveal a dark secret that he would rather die than reveal. That's a really good twist of the Riddler, especially considering a lot of times people make the joke that, you know, how's the Riddler threatening? Just look his shit up. But that's definitely a cool way to be like, oh, well, can't really do that like this. And then his riddles that are riddles, they're riddles written in code, hidden either with, you know, you need to see it with a black light, or you need to spray paint certain areas, or he carved it in a way to where unless you use like certain materials you won't see them, shit like that. And then they're coded, and then the code, when you decipher the code, is a code in and of itself, and then the riddle's answer, you have to decipher not what the riddle is, like, oh, the riddle is, oh, it's a rat. You have to decide what he's referencing, which is a very cool twist on the Riddler. I could go for hours talking about the Riddler, but as a whole, very solid villain. The ending was kind of for me because it seemed like it came out of nowhere. The Riddler spends 90% of the movie trying to show people who are corrupt, and then at the end, it looks like he's going for citywide destruction and then just chaos. And it was really weird because that didn't seem to be his motif. But if the end goal was for him to just assassinate the mayor and that was his plan from the jump, then I can see why he did it. It definitely would have made it easier to ensure everything happened. But I don't know, all the extra points to get there and a lot of the chaos just seemed really weird. It seemed more like a Joker plan at the end. The Joker's plans are very, I want to reach this point and I will do whatever it takes to reach that point. The Riddlers are very calculated. Like, if I'm going to reach this point, I'm going to move in the exact way necessary to get me to that point. And his last plan seemed to leave a lot of room for error, which isn't much like the Riddler, but it's fine. You know, this is probably pre-Riddler, just like it's pre-Batman, which brings me to my next point, the Batman. Robert Pattinson does a really good job at showing a Bruce Wayne who doesn't think that Bruce Wayne matters. He thinks that the Batman is it, and if the Batman dies, it is what it is. He shirks off his responsibilities, he shirks his duties. He very rarely, if ever, shows up to things like, he very rarely shows up to like trust funds and all sorts of other events and things. So that was very interesting. So keeping that in mind, he does a really good job of toting that line. And some people say he's too edgy, he's too emo, to which I say, I mean, it's Batman. Batman is supposed to be the opposite of Superman. Superman's the Boy Scout. Batman's the edgy guy. Like, that's the point. So I really like that. Robert Pattinson definitely took that, like, that doom and gloom stare of just like, you can never love me, Bella. And, like, took that shit and was like, okay, what if I did that, but it wasn't cringe as hell? So, and he did. He did a really good job at it. The plot line was, for the most part, excellent. There were a few things, like I brought up the Riddler thing. There were a few things here and there where it was like, like, there were people who wanted to unmask Batman, but they couldn't because James Gordon was there and he was stopping them for several hours. And I'm going to be honest, I know people are like, oh, he's a higher rank, so of course they would listen. For me, that seems kind of cap. Like, I'm going to be honest, I think plenty of people, even in a position of like a job, would risk that job to satiate the curiosity. People are just naturally curious. And the fact that one of them is about to do it anyway, but only right when Batman's about to wake up, is a little contrived. Like, you can't really have your cake and eat it too. If you're going to say that no one's going to unmask him because of Jim Gordon being there and him pulling rank, then don't have them do it right when he's about to wake up. That's a bit of a plot contrivance, but ultimately, it is what it is. The movie did a really good job of showing Batman's gadgets, and while I'm assuming this Batman doesn't have the ninja training, he does have a lot of skill. I'll give him that. His suit is a lot more tanky, which I think is really cool. It gave me like an Arkham Knight type vibe, and his gadgets were pretty cool. So I did really like that. I also liked Batman's fighting, and above all else, I think one of the coolest things about Batman that they did was the symbol, where when the bat symbol goes up, criminals start stopping shit. Like a lot of them stop because even though he can't be everywhere, the criminals don't know where he's gonna be, and that's a pretty cool thing. And they did a small tidbit of that in Dark Knight, where one of the dudes is like, "Nah, man, not tonight," and the guy's like, "Are you crazy? Like, you got a higher chance of winning the lottery or getting struck by lightning than to run into the bat," which it was cool, don't get me wrong, but this one really showed, like, when it cut to the scenes of them looking in dark corners and not knowing if he was there or not, and then just running or stopping or being scared. I thought that that was personally really cool because it showed how much the Batman signal truly does work. Like, the symbol of the Batman really does work. And he brought up how things aren't getting better, things are getting worse, which also ties into the fact that Batman is only doing one thing. He's stopping the bleeding, which is the crime, but the beauty of Batman is he does both things. Bruce Wayne is supposed to, like, you know, fix the wounds, and Batman stops the bleeding. And Batman stops the bleeding, but then the true wounds get cleansed or healed by Bruce Wayne putting his money into helping people. This Batman doesn't do that. So he's wondering why every time someone bleeds, he wipes up the blood, why it keeps bleeding, because you're not actually stopping the issue, which he realizes near the end of the movie, which is phenomenal. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, I'll have a thing near the end, but she played Selina Kyle really well. There was one thing where I was like, that I didn't think that needed to be in the film, but for the most part, Zoe Kravitz did a phenomenal job as Selina Kyle. There is some controversy that's going on with that. Some of it is in part to Zoe Kravitz's latest statement that talking about she thinks she didn't get the Catwoman role because Christopher Nolan is racist, and I'm just like, really? Like, you're Catwoman now? Come on. But it is what it is. There's a big issue with the casting. Like, you know, James Gordon is black. Catwoman, Selina Kyle is black. So some people were up in arms about that. Other people were up in arms at the people being up in arms, saying, you know, oh, if you don't like that, you're the true racist. And other people are saying you only like that because, you know, it's a POC, doesn't add anything. Personally, I'm of the mindset of I would prefer characters that were a certain race to stay a certain race, and this applies to both sides. I do like some of what Disney's doing in regards to bringing characters like America Chavez and Miss Marvel, which are original POC characters, to light. Granted, they've done some tokenization as well, and I'm not a big fan of that. I think that it's the equivalent of, you know, giving another character scraps. And my reasoning for that I may tackle in another video. But for the moment, this is about Batwoman. This is about Catwoman and Batman. And Catwoman as a whole, disregarding all of that stuff outside of the movie, she did a phenomenal job. Zoe Kravitz is a really good actress, and she really brings Selina Kyle in a way that, in my opinion, was superior to the last Selina Kyle in the Batman, the third movie, the one with Bane. I forget what it's called. Batman Returns, I think it is. I forget the name of that one, so I do apologize. But she did a really good job in that film. There was one line she had where she said, no one cares about, like, us. They don't, like, she was mad about what happened to her friend. She said they only care about these white privileged assholes. That line for me felt out of place, and whenever people counter why that line isn't out of place, they always bring up the rich part of, like, you know, rich people are actually fucking everything up. But it's like, the rich part isn't the part I have a problem with, it's the white part, and the biggest reason is because it seems so out of place. It feels out of place because Selina Kyle is a very much, like, I hate the rich type character. Which is fine. I mean, that's perfectly fine with me. So she's very much of I hate the rich type character. Her friend just died, and her friend is white. So the line of they only care about these white privileged assholes is weird because it implies that them being both white and rich is why they care, like why people care that they're dead, which implies that they don't care if white poor people die and they don't care if a black rich person dies, which personally I don't think is the case. I think if you took Falcone or you took the Penguin or well, I wouldn't say the Penguin in this movie, because in this movie he's a mid-level villain. But if you took like Falcone, if you took these characters who are super high rich dudes and you made them black, and they still had all that influence and power, there would be a noticeable vacuum. There would be a noticeable gap if those characters were to die. I think this movie, like, so the phrase is weird because it makes it seem like because they're both white and rich, they have all this power, and if you take away one of those, then they would, like, people wouldn't care anymore, which isn't the case, because no one cared. We know that the white thing is the issue because no one really cared that your friend died, even though she was white, and we know that the rich thing above all else is the problem, and that's part of Batman's stories, that money corrupts, and so many criminals do what they're doing for money, and Batman, as a man who has money, has to remain incorruptible. Batman, in fact, that's kind of the whole point of Batman, that he is supposed to represent that, being rich isn't inherently bad, just like poor people. A lot of the people he boxes with in the law ring, or in the judicial ring, are always people who think that people who are poor are a problem. You can even see this in the Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, where, Thomas Wayne in that movie has a problem with poor people and thinks that people who are, poor or run down are, going to do crime and shit like that. And there are characters who genuinely believe that in Batman, and Batman has to tackle with he has to tassel with those people and be like, that's not how this works. That's not the case. Likewise, you have very poor characters who think that all rich people are bad. Batman proves that that's not the case as Bruce Wayne. So the point of it is that money can corrupt, but there are people who are incorruptible. The biggest example being James Gordon. James Gordon's storyline at the end of the day is that there are some people who just cannot be corrupted. In some comics, James Gordon does get corrupted. That's neither here nor there. The vast majority of James Gordon comics are how pure, upright, and how much of a good cop James Gordon is. With that being said, I think this movie, I think that's partially why I was kind of about that line. I think if she had just stuck it to them being rich, it would have worked for her character, and it would have added another contrast between Selina Kyle and Bruce and Catwoman and Batman. The biggest thing about them that a lot of people don't know is that the reason why Catwoman and Batman work so well together is they balance each other out. Catwoman is a person who has given up her morality in order to do what she needs to do, but has not given up her humanity. She still has fun with what she does. She still enjoys it. She still loves her life, and she loves life, and she tries to live her life to the fullest, even making jokes about how she has 9 of them, and that's why she's got to live how she does. But she's thrown away her morality. She steals, she'll kill, she'll do things that are seen as morally bad, and justifies it by doing it to rich people as it's okay, which is not the case. Batman is the opposite. He's a character who has kept his morals intact, but has thrown away his humanity. He is someone who has forgotten what it means to be human, which quite a few Batmen do get right. Even Ben Affleck's one got this in the Justice League, where he says that the reason why Superman should lead the Justice League is because he's more human than he is, which is a perfect example of Batman's thought process, even if he doesn't verbally say it, that Batman sees himself more as a symbol, and he's given up a lot of what it means to be human. And his reason for giving these things up is mostly in part because he thinks that he can't do the job if he's more human, if he has those emotional wants and desires. But he never sacrifices his morality, which he feels is essential to being the Batman. Batman gives Catwoman morals and shows her that what she's doing is wrong and why. And Catwoman shows Batman that you can do their job and still care and still love. That's why in scenes where Bruce loses someone, or movies where Bruce loses someone like Dick, or he loses Damian, or he loses Jason, if he knows Selina Kyle at that point and they're close, she'll drop the facade and come to him and know that he needs her, and he'll lean on her and she'll let him, because she is his out. She and his kids and Alfred are his outs to those emotions, and she shows him that you can have those emotions and be Batman at the same time. A lot of times people say Batman's a dick when it comes to the kids. A big reason is because when he puts on the suit, there's an emotional disconnect between him and the Robins to an extent, because now he is not Bruce Wayne, son of Thomas Wayne, father of Damian Wayne, or father of Dick Grayson. He is now the Batman, and that is Robin. Disconnect. Selena Kyle helped show him that you can't fully turn off those emotions, whether you put the mask on or off. This was somewhat shown in this as well. She slowly pushes Batman to show more and more of himself and his emotions, while at the same time, he shows her that what you're doing, if you go down this path of being, morally corrupt, it'll take you, and you'll never stop. So, that was really good. They did a really good job with that. I would say some people had problems with the casting, like making a lot of characters POCs. I didn't really have a problem. Like I said, the casting thing is its own thing. I already discussed my feelings on that. One thing that I thought was kind of weird was how undefined pretty much every black character who was named was pretty much, I wouldn't say incorruptible, but they were morally undefined. Like, for example, James Gordon was the only older cop out of all the other cops. First of all, he was the only older cop of color that was named. All the other cops were white dudes. Every white dude cop was corrupt. James Gordon was the only non-corrupt cop. Is what it is. Then there's the mayor, the running mayor, who's black. She's the only one who is like a beacon of morality. She is willing to die for the children. She is willing to get shot or go into a panic or get injured or die to make sure that other people are good and other people are safe. I'm not saying a character like that can't exist in Gotham, and I'll get to the depiction of Gotham in a second. It was just weird that every character of color that was like that was pretty much never really morally in the wrong at any point. And I know people are going to bring up Selena Kyle getting ready to kill one of the dudes, but even Selena Kyle's thing isn't just outright morally wrong. Like, for example, if I took a gun and killed someone, you could make an argument that, like, you could say what I did was wrong. And if I did it for no reason, there's not really a defense for that. But a lot of Selena Kyle's things are an eye for an eye. She steals from corrupt people that are rich, and she goes to kill someone who was complacent and, in fact, helped orchestrate or at least cover up the murder of an innocent woman, even to the extent where he helped keep her locked into the country. And then you've got the third thing where she goes to kill the man who was responsible for the killing of her best friend. These are examples of eye for an eyes, and an argument can be made that the things that she was doing were not morally incorrect, which is partially what I mean. She doesn't seem to make any morally incorrect, just like completely objectively, these are wrong actions. So that was kind of weird. I really, really hope, I want to be optimistic, so I'm just going to really hope that this was just a coincidence. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. First and foremost, like, for example, you have characters like Cottonmouth and Black Mariah in Luke Cage who are super rich. They're super rich, they're black, and they're corrupt, and they have so much money and power that the law can't touch them. So, and that's kind of a point against the whole, they're the white privilege, like, assholes thing. Like one of the things about Gotham and about money is if you have money, it gets to the point where it's like, you have so much money and influence that most people will, who have those biases, will overlook them because of your money, which I think Luke Cage did a good job at. So I'm hoping that this is just a coincidence. I hate the can do no wrong person of color stereotype. Because, like, I think a character who can do no wrong off rip is just I don't like those written characters at all. It doesn't matter their skin color, but I especially hate it in modern media where it's like the black character can do no wrong or they're always the heroes. And I hate that because it makes it to where, like I want black villains, you know what I mean? Like, I lost my shit at Cottonmouth. And Black Mariah, while I didn't like her as much as Cottonmouth, she was fucking menacing, and I loved every second of it. And that's kind of what I mean. I want to see person of color heroes. I want to see person of color anti-heroes. I want to see person of color villains. I want to see person of color random thugs, which, there's plenty of those. I want to see those characters because I want it to fully put on the spectrum everything, the good and the bad of being a person of color, just like how it's been done for white characters. Like, if you want it, like, I want the representation fully. That means that I want good and bad black and white characters, completely. I know that's sort of off tangent, but that kind of ties into what I was saying with the movie. I'm just gonna. Apparently, there's talk of a Batman 2, so I'm just going to hope and wait and see how that goes. But as a whole, the dude who played that aside, the dude who played James Gordon nailed it. Like, it felt like James Gordon came off the pages. Like, the way he's willing to put his life on the line, the way he's willing to put himself at risk for the sake of the Batman was definitely it was amazing. It was a very great, clear portrayal of his intelligence, of his fierceness, of his duty to uphold the law. We also get to see him grind up to become commissioner because he doesn't start as the commissioner, which was really cool. There was one scene where after he pretends to let the Batman escape, the bat signal gets turned on by Selina Kyle, and you would think that people would immediately be like, the cops would be like, oh, up in arms about that, but, it's never brought up, and that's an example of, I would say, one of the plot holes or plot contrivances, especially considering Batman's now wanted because, they thought he was a major criminal. But it is what it is. Other than that, I didn't really have any major problems with the movie. There was one scene where when Batman was helping people after he nearly risked his life to save everyone, which was phenomenal. It was a great character development for him. When he reaches his hand out towards the mayor, she just kind of stares and looks at him, and then he turns his hand a bit to the side and grabs this kid who needed help. And I really hope that I missaw that, because I hope that Bruce Wayne wasn't about to go just save the mayor instead of the child, and the mayor had to be the one to be like, no, save the kid. I really, really hope that wasn't the case, because that would just be, holy shit, that'd be so fucked, and hilarious, but mostly messed up. Andy Serkis as Alfred was amazing as well. Like, the casting of this movie, outside of any of the, if you just took the movie as a whole, you ignored any controversy, anything like that, you just watched the film, this was a solid movie, and I think they have something really good here, which thank God DC is getting some good stuff in their live action movies, because after the absolute garbage fest that was the Snyderverse and the Snyder films, which were definitely terrible, they were definitely terrible. This was such a good, and this includes both the Justice League and the Snyderverse reboot. I don't care. They're both garbage. We finally got a really good Batman film after so many years, and I really enjoyed it. And this felt like a true nod to true Batman fans. Not to say that if you didn't page through the comics and read all the games or play the games, you're not a true Batman fan. I'm just saying that if you love the detective part of Batman, if you only think of Batman as I'm justice, and he's throwing hands and throwing gadgets, this probably isn't the film for you. You're probably not going to enjoy it as much. But if you like the fighting, the detective part of Batman, if you like the puzzle solving, the clues, and above all else, if you thoroughly enjoy Batman as a whole, grappling with the darkness of the city and himself, and everything in between, you will like, if not love, this film. There were a lot of other things done as well. I really loved the emotional talk between Alfred and Batman. But yes, definitely go see this film if you haven't seen it. If throw away the controversy, throw away all that shit. Watch the film first. See how you feel. I personally cannot wait to see what else is going to come out of this verse, if they're going to have more. I know they said they're going to have a second one. I can't wait to see where it goes. I hope the second one's as good, if not better. I'm greatly looking forward to it. But yeah, go see the Batman. I would give it 8.5 bats out of 10. Maybe 8 bats. Also, the soundtrack is really good. It sounded kind of like Darth Vader's theme, but cut off halfway. Really weird, but I did enjoy it. But with that being said, thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like down below, a comment, hit that subscribe button, ding that bell icon so when I update more videos, because I will be trying to post more consistently, you'll be able to come and see those. Other than that, I hope you all have a phenomenal day. Enjoy yourselves, and all of you take care.